After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's plan to sabotage me backfired, landing her in jail and destroying her family forever. Hey there, welcome to today's story. Are you a first-time viewer or just coming back for more? Either way, I'd love your support, and if you enjoy the story, please help me hit 1,000 subscribers soon. It'll motivate me to keep bringing you more exciting tales. Now, let's dive into today's story. Picture this. You're about to share one of the happiest moments of your life, only to have it sabotaged by someone you trusted, someone you thought was family. Have you ever experienced or felt like you could relate to a situation like this? Stick with me until the end to see how the character manages to overcome it. Let's find out together. You know, when you're in love, everything seems perfect. I, Lily, thought I had it all, married to Mark, the man of my dreams, and we were about to start our family. But little did I know, the journey ahead would be full of obstacles. And the biggest one, his sister, Rachel. It all started when I first met Rachel. First, I was charmed by her, the typical cool, older sister who made you feel welcome. But with time, I realized something wasn't right. She was always so quick to criticize, tear people down, and make everyone feel small. And worst of all, I began to see how much she despised me. Rachel didn't just have a problem with me. She had a problem with everyone Mark loved. Her jealousy was a poison that slowly crept into every interaction we had. But I never expected it to get this bad. Started small, and like any toxic behavior, it crept up on me so gradually that I didn't even notice it at first. I still remember the first time it happened. Mark and I had just moved into our first apartment together, and everything was blissful as it should be. It was a fresh start, our little haven away from the chaos of family drama. But that was when Rachel made her first subtle move. At a small family dinner, she casually glanced at me as I walked in, a quiet whisper to the person sitting beside her. It was nothing overt, just an offhand comment I couldn't fully hear, but it didn't sit right with me. I could feel her eyes on me as I passed by, and it was enough to make me uncomfortable. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But I wasn't. Not really. As time went on, the whispers became more frequent. At every family gathering, every holiday meal, every event, there was always something. The words were often coded in sweetness, wrapped up in a smile or a casual tone. But the meaning behind them was clear. Mark could really do better, she'd say, laughing as though she were sharing a harmless joke. He deserves someone more refined, you know? The first few times I tried to ignore it, dismissing it as her overprotective sister act. But over time, it began to sting. It was clear that Rachel wasn't just looking out for her brother, like she claimed. It was deeper than that. She didn't want Mark to have me, or anyone else for that matter. She wanted him to need her, to remain tethered to her in a way that no one else could penetrate. She was manipulative, and her methods were far more subtle than I initially realized. And then came the exes. Every chance she got, Rachel would bring them up. Mark's past relationships. It didn't matter if we were in the middle of a conversation about something else. If we were laughing about a memory from our last vacation, or if we were just sharing a quiet moment together, she would slip in a comment about one of Mark's exes. You know, Lisa always knew how to make a dinner party really elegant, she'd say with a glance at me, as if I couldn't feel the undercurrent of judgment in her words. Or, remember how close you were with Sarah? You two were like inseparable back in the day. The first few times I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't matter, that it was just her trying to relive the past in her own way. But the more she did it, the more I began to question my place in Mark's life. I knew those relationships were part of his history, but Rachel wasn't content with just acknowledging that. She would keep bringing them up, pushing me to compare myself to these women, reminding me constantly that I was competing with ghosts. The worst part? Mark, being the kind-hearted guy he is, would always brush it off. He'd ask Rachel to stop, but he never fully stood up to her. And she would just laugh as if to say, "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just trying to help." But what really hurt was the way she would undermine me. Every single time. It wasn't just the subtle jabs anymore. Rachel went out of her way to belittle my choices, to make me question everything I did. I remember one evening when Mark and I were planning our wedding. We had just started looking at venues, and it was the first time I felt truly excited about something in a while. We were at a family dinner and I brought it up casually hoping for some support. But of course, Rachel had to insert herself. Really? A beach wedding? Don't you think that's a bit tacky? She asked, raising an eyebrow as if she was judging the most absurd idea she'd ever heard. Mark tried to deflect, but I could see the unease in his eyes. He wasn't sure how to handle her, not wanting to create any more tension. I think it's a great idea, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But Rachel was relentless. She'd find something to criticize in every plan I made, every dress I considered, every song I wanted for our ceremony. That color scheme is so not elegant, she'd scoff. Don't you think Mark would prefer something more sophisticated? What really bothered me was that Mark never seemed to notice how hurtful Rachel's comments were. He'd brush them off, say she was just being Rachel, the well-meaning but slightly overbearing sister. But I wasn't blind. I could see how it was wearing on me and how it was wearing on us. Every time Rachel said something hurtful, I felt the distance grow. Slowly, she was planting seeds of doubt in Mark's mind about me, about my worth, my taste, my ability to make him happy. It wasn't just the wedding plans, either. Rachel would make comments about my cooking, my fashion choices, even the way I spoke sometimes. She would find something, anything, to pick apart. And Mark never saw it for what it truly was, an attack on me. A subtle attempt to make me feel inferior. A constant reminder that I wasn't good enough for her brother. And it wasn't just words. It was her actions, too. I remember one Christmas, when Mark's family had come over for a big celebration. It was supposed to be a joyful, cozy family event. But Rachel had a way of turning it into something uncomfortable. At one point, she accidentally spilled her drink on my new coat, right in front of everyone, and then made a huge fuss about it, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you standing there. It wasn't an accident." I could tell. It was a deliberate attempt to make me feel small, to make me feel like I wasn't important enough to even notice. And still, Mark didn't see it. He apologized for her behavior, of course. But it didn't change the fact that I was the one left standing there, wet and embarrassed, while Rachel laughed it off. The thing is, the more Rachel did these things, the more it began to chip away at my confidence. I started second-guessing everything I did, wondering if I was truly good enough for Mark. Her negativity was like a shadow over my life, always there, always present, seeping into our relationship, making me question every decision I made. I tried to rise above it. I tried to convince myself that I was stronger than this, that Rachel's words didn't matter. But the truth was, they did. Her constant undermining, her passive-aggressive behavior, her attempts to break me down, they worked. Slowly, Rachel was winning. I couldn't let her destroy what I had with Mark. But every word, every sly comment was taking its toll. And deep down, I knew it was only going to get worse. The day I found out I was pregnant should have been one of the happiest moments of my life. It should have been a moment when I could share the joy with everyone I loved. A milestone that marked the beginning of a new chapter for Mark and me. It should have been a celebration full of laughter, love, and well-wishes. But not with Rachel. Oh no! It wasn't going to be that easy. Rachel had to ruin everything. Mark and I had decided to announce the news at his birthday party, a private gathering with close family and friends. It seemed like the perfect moment. Mark had always been excited about the idea of becoming a father, and I was eager to share the good news with everyone. The party was supposed to be a fresh start for us, a moment we could cherish before life would inevitably change with the arrival of our baby. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. I knew Rachel would somehow find a way to spoil it. We'd been through so much already. Her passive-aggressive comments, her constant undermining, and her persistent attempts to manipulate the situation. But I was hopeful. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this moment would be different. I had no idea just how wrong I was. As soon as I made the announcement, I felt it. The coldness. It wasn't just in the air. It was in Rachel's eyes. She froze, her smile stiffening, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The room was buzzing with excitement, but Rachel's reaction was a stark contrast to the joy surrounding us. It was as if a shadow had passed over her. And in that instant, I could feel the tension in the air thickening. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Maybe I was just overthinking things. After all, I couldn't expect her to be over the moon about my pregnancy. Could I? But the coldness in her eyes lingered far too long for me to ignore. I turned to Mark, hoping to see a reassuring look, but instead I saw his brows furrow in confusion. He must have sensed it too. I tried to push past the moment. I smiled at the family around me, soaking in their excitement and joy. I should have been celebrating, but instead I found myself distracted by Rachel's behavior. I knew something was coming. There was always something with her. And then it happened. In the middle of all the excitement, as I was talking to my sister-in-law, Sarah, Rachel approached me holding a plate of food in her hands. Her face was the picture of sweetness. The kind of fake sweetness I had come to dread. She had that smile, wide, almost too wide, as she stepped toward me. "I'm so excited for you," she said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't genuine. It wasn't warm. It was rehearsed, like she had prepared this moment, but for what, I wasn't sure. "Here. I made this for you, just a little something to celebrate your big news." I hesitated. A small voice in my head told me not to take it, but my politeness overruled my instinct. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe for once she was actually trying to be nice. Maybe this time things would be different. So I took the plate. She handed it to me with an unsettling smile, and I thanked her as I tried to hold back the unease that was bubbling up inside me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The way she handed it to me, the way her eyes gleamed, it felt like she was waiting for something. But what? I sat down at the table, trying to act normal, trying to shake off the feeling of dread creeping over me. Mark joined me, and we shared a few laughs with the others at the party. But the plate of food sat there in front of me, taunting me with its familiarity. I didn't want to eat it, but I did anyway. I forced a few bites down, pretending everything was fine, pretending that Rachel's odd behavior didn't bother me. And then the worst thing happened. I didn't eat much of it. But Jason, my brother-in-law, Mark's best friend, did. Jason wasn't paying attention, laughing and joking around with the rest of the guys. He picked up the plate I had been given, not knowing the danger hidden in it. I watched as he took a bite, and then another, completely unaware of the poison that had been carefully laced into the dish. The room seemed to quiet around me. I didn't know why, but a knot began to form in my stomach. Something was wrong, and I knew it even before Jason started to cough. At first, it was subtle. A slight cough, a hand pressed to his chest. But then it intensified. His face turned pale, his eyes widened, and his breath came in short, panicked gasps. The noise in the room faded away, replaced by confusion and panic. I stood up, heart racing, as Jason's condition worsened right before my eyes. Mark rushed to him, trying to help, but it was clear something was very wrong. Jason collapsed, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. The air around us went cold. "What happened?" someone screamed. "Call an ambulance." I stood frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest as everything started to spiral out of control. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what had happened. Rachel's face flashed in my mind. I had no doubt now she was behind this. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but by then, Jason had already passed out. The whole room was in chaos. People were shouting, and others were frantically trying to help. But I knew deep down that this was no accident. Rachel had done this on purpose. The police arrived shortly after, and the truth began to come out. Jason's blood work revealed traces of something toxic, something that shouldn't have been anywhere near the food at a family party. It was only then that I pieced it together. Rachel had laced the food. She had poisoned the very dish she handed me with the intent of harming me and possibly the baby. But Jason, unaware, had eaten it instead. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. I had always known Rachel was manipulative, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She wasn't just trying to tear us apart with words or silent treatment, she was willing to harm someone to make me suffer. She had planned this coldly and methodically. What made it worse was how Rachel tried to play it off. As the chaos unfolded, she acted shocked, as if she had no idea what was happening. She even tried to pretend to be concerned for Jason. But I saw through it. I saw the look in her eyes, the same coldness I had seen earlier, now replaced by a flicker of fear, but also something else. I couldn't put my finger on it. But I knew she was more scared of getting caught than she was of Jason's condition. But the truth couldn't be hidden for long. The police quickly got to the bottom of it, and Rachel was arrested. The weight of her actions crashed down on me. I was sickened not just by the poison, but by the sheer malice behind it. Rachel had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, Make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. The next few moments were a blur. Jason collapsed shortly after eating the food, and suddenly the world around me seemed to spin out of control. At first, I thought he was choking. But then I saw his face. Pale, his eyes wide with confusion and panic. His body stiffened, and then, like a rag doll, he fell to the floor with a sickening thud. The noise in the room stopped immediately, and all that filled the air was the heavy sound of my own heart pounding in my chest. Panic set in fast. People screamed for help, and Mark rushed to his brother, shaking him, trying to get a reaction, but there was nothing. Nothing but the cold, unresponsive body of the man I had come to think of as family. It was as if the whole room had suddenly fallen into slow motion. I stood there, paralyzed by shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Jason had been laughing just moments before, joking around in his usual lighthearted manner. Now he was lying on the floor, and all I could think was, what did we just do to him? The ambulance was called, but it felt like hours before they arrived. In reality, it was probably only a few minutes, but those minutes felt like a lifetime. People rushed around, trying to help, but I could see the fear in their eyes. Jason was slipping away, and I could do nothing but stand there. Mark held his brother's head in his hands, murmuring to him, desperately trying to keep him conscious, but it wasn't enough. I could see Mark's face contorting with frustration, his eyes filled with fear and disbelief. The paramedics arrived, but by the time they took Jason away, it was already clear that something wasn't right. They didn't tell us much, but they moved quickly, and their hurried actions spoke volumes. They didn't need to say it out loud. The look on their faces told me everything. They were worried, very worried. The house, which had been filled with joy just moments before, was now submerged in an eerie silence. No one spoke. No one knew what to do except to wait. Wait for news. Wait for the doctors. Wait for some kind of answer to this nightmare. It wasn't until much later, hours later, that the truth came out, and with it, a revelation that would change everything. Jason had been poisoned. But what truly shook me to my core was this. The dish that Jason had eaten, the one that had sent him into a state of shock, was meant for me. Rachel. It was Rachel. She had laced the food with something harmful, with the intention of ruining my pregnancy announcement. The moment I realized this, the blood drained from my face. I had suspected Rachel, but this was something I could never have predicted. The depth of her malice, the coldness with which she had carried out her plan, made my skin crawl. Rachel had always been jealous. I knew that, but I never thought she was capable of something like this. I never imagined she would go this far. I thought maybe she'd make more snide comments. Maybe try to make me feel small in front of the family, but this was an entirely new level of hatred. It was a calculated attack, and it was all because of me. Rachel had always resented me. I knew that. She couldn't stand the fact that Mark and I were building a life together, that we were starting our family. It wasn't just jealousy. It was bitterness. A deep, consuming bitterness. She wanted to be the center of his world, and she couldn't stand the idea of me taking that place. She felt betrayed. Betrayed by the fact that Mark was moving forward with his life, that he was starting a family of his own. And it was like everything inside her just snapped. She couldn't handle the idea of me getting attention. She couldn't bear the thought of me being the one Mark focused on. I had become a threat to her, and in her twisted mind, I needed to be eliminated. But she wasn't going to kill me. No. She was much smarter than that. She had intended for me to eat the poison dish, but fate had a different plan. Jason, in his innocence, had eaten it instead. I was horrified, and in that moment, I realized the depth of Rachel's obsession with control. Her jealousy wasn't just about me being with Mark, it was about her inability to let go of a part of him that wasn't hers anymore. This was all about power. When the police got involved, the truth came out piece by piece. Security cameras at the venue had captured everything. The footage showed Rachel handing me the poison plate. I could see it all, her smiling face, her eyes glinting with something dark as she walked away. She didn't even try to hide it. It was like she thought no one would notice, like she thought she had pulled off the perfect crime. But the cameras didn't lie. Mark was furious when he saw the footage. The anger radiating off him was palpable. It was a rage I had never seen before. His voice was trembling with fury as he confronted Rachel, demanding answers. But she did what she always did, she played the victim. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that she had no idea the food was dangerous, that she never meant for anything bad to happen. But the evidence was irrefutable. The camera footage, Jason's medical reports, the toxic substance found in his system, it all pointed to Rachel. The police didn't waste any time. They arrested her right there at the house. And even then, Rachel didn't seem to get it. She didn't apologize, didn't seem to care about what she had done to Jason. She didn't even seem sorry that she had hurt me or that her jealousy had led to such a catastrophe. All she cared about was herself. She wanted to be the center of attention, and when she wasn't, she didn't hesitate to tear down anyone who threatened her position. It was as if her entire world revolved around being in control, being the focal point of everything. And I was just an obstacle standing in her way, an obstacle that she had no problem trying to remove. The arrest was only the beginning. The fallout from that night shook our entire family. Mark was torn between his loyalty to his sister and his love for me. He couldn't believe that his sister, someone he had known his whole life, was capable of such cruelty. But there was no denying what she had done. She had tried to poison me, and in the process, she had poisoned our entire family. And Jason. Jason was still in the hospital. He was in stable condition now, but it was a long recovery. He hadn't deserved any of this. He hadn't even known what was happening when he ate the food. He was the unwitting victim, and now the entire family was left to pick up the pieces. But the worst part of all of this? Rachel never showed any remorse. Not even when she was arrested. She only cared about herself. The people around her were collateral damage in her need for control and attention. As for me, I was just another pawn in her twisted game. I wish I could say that Rachel learned her lesson after everything that happened. But instead, she did what she always did. She played the victim. Even in the face of all the evidence. She tried to manipulate everyone around her, trying to twist the story and make herself out to be the one who had been wronged. It was like a script she had rehearsed her whole life. Whenever she was caught in a lie, whenever her actions had consequences, she would turn the tables, acting as though she had been the one who had suffered. It was maddening. She wasn't just trying to manipulate me anymore. She was playing the same game with everyone, including her parents. I saw her, a few days after the arrest, texting her mother in tears, pleading for sympathy. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt," she wrote, using her usual strategy of turning her mistakes into someone else's fault. "I just couldn't stand seeing her happy. You have to understand, this was all because I was hurt. It was so predictable." She didn't care about Jason. She didn't care about the family. She only cared about her own feelings and her need to be the center of attention. She couldn't handle the thought of me, someone she saw as beneath her, getting what she thought she deserved. The problem wasn't that she couldn't stand seeing me happy. The problem was that Rachel couldn't stand anyone being happy if she wasn't the one getting the spotlight. Mark and I, on the other hand, didn't have the luxury of playing the victim. We couldn't hide behind our feelings and pretend like the consequences of her actions didn't exist. Jason was still recovering, though his injuries weren't as severe as they could have been. He was physically okay, but emotionally it was harder to tell. The guilt, the realization that he had eaten the poisoned food meant for me tore him apart. And Rachel's ability to lie her way out of it only made things worse. Mark had never been so angry in his life, but he was also deeply heartbroken for his brother. But despite Rachel's efforts to manipulate everyone around her, the truth was clear. The police had gathered all the evidence they needed. Her attempt to disguise her malice as a cry for help was falling apart. The security footage was undeniable. There she was, handing me the poisoned plate with that smirk on her face. Like she was somehow above the law. She thought she could get away with it. She thought no one would notice. But I noticed. And more importantly, the police noticed. The legal process wasn't easy. The case went to court, and Rachel's defense team tried to paint her as a misunderstood woman who was simply overwhelmed by jealousy. They played on her emotions, trying to argue that she had never meant for anyone to be hurt, that it was all a tragic misunderstanding. But the jury wasn't buying it. The evidence was irrefutable. The medical records, the toxicology reports, and the security footage told a very different story. Rachel was convicted. The courtroom went silent when the verdict was read. My heart felt heavy, knowing what her actions had cost all of us. Mark, even though he knew Rachel was in the wrong, couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. It was his sister, after all. The betrayal was so profound that it left scars that wouldn't heal overnight. But he knew what had to be done. Her life, as she knew it, fell apart. No more pretending to be the golden child. No more manipulation, no more controlling the narrative. Rachel was facing the consequences of her actions. She was serving time, though it was still hard for me to truly feel any kind of sympathy for her. Even now in prison, she refused to take responsibility for what she had done. Her letters, if they could even be called apologies, were filled with bitterness, blaming me, blaming everyone but herself. It was clear that Rachel had never truly cared about anyone else, only herself. She couldn't stand to see me happy, couldn't bear the thought of being overshadowed. The most heartbreaking thing wasn't the fact that she poisoned me, or that she tried to hurt the people I loved most. It was that after everything, she couldn't even recognize the harm she'd caused. She only saw herself as the victim. And in a way, I almost pitied her for it. Her inability to see the damage she had done was what truly broke her. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had learned a valuable lesson through all of this about toxic people and the kind of damage they can inflict if you allow them to stay in your life. You can't let someone poison your existence just because they can't deal with their own insecurities. You can't let them drag you down, no matter who they are or how closely they're related to you. You have to protect your peace no matter the cost. Mark and I, after everything, were determined to move forward. Our relationship had been tested in ways I never imagined. But in the end, it made us stronger. We knew that as long as we had each other, we could weather anything. The scars from Rachel's actions would never fade completely, but I was ready to move on. We were ready to focus on our future, on our growing family, and on the life we were building together. There was still so much to look forward to. As for Rachel, she was locked away. A distant memory for me. I didn't need to waste energy thinking about her anymore. I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not when I saw the way she had hurt everyone around her. Not when I realized how deeply she had tried to tear apart our lives just because she couldn't stand seeing someone else happy. I would never let her have that kind of power over me again. What do you think about today's story? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment with your feelings or feedback. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you won't miss out on the next exciting story. Thanks so much for sticking with me until the end. I really appreciate you being part of this journey.